All right, guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today, sitting down with us, I have Coach Timmerman. He is the offensive line coach at Grayson High School. It's in Loganville, Georgia. Did I write that down right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you for coming on my lonely little podcast here. It's nothing too big. Trying to make it bigger, but it's not nothing too fancy.
Oh, absolutely. I always love talking ball, man. Love getting on the opportunity to talk with people and just hash things out.
Yeah, people should know who you are from Twitter and social media, but if they don't, they live under a rock, I guess. I don't know.
I don't know about all that. I just try to put some stuff out there that people will enjoy.
Well, offensive line coaches should know, I guess.
Yeah, maybe so.
Because we have our own language. I tell
Yeah,
people that as O-line coaches, we have our own language. And they go, "What do you mean?" I said, "We're the only ones that can bring 5 starters at least together and hatch things out in a matter of a minute."
yeah,
And quarterbacks and wide receivers, they have to have the whisper. They have to like whisper sweet nothings in their ear. We can say other things.
yeah. It's a totally different world down there in the trenches. That's for sure.
Because I coached quarterbacks for about a year and a half, and I loved it and hated it. I loved it because I could just stand there and talk about mechanics. I hated it because I was like, "You guys don't hit nobody."
Yeah,
Like I couldn't do it. And then on the sideline, because I was the OC too, so on the sideline, guess who I would talk to? The very first person was quarterback. And I'm trying to talk to him like an old line coach. I was like, "This isn't working.
yeah,
I'm not the quarterback whisperer." I'm like, "This is not working."
yeah. Different communication goes on down there with the big boys. That's for sure.
Because we had an actual O-line coach, and I was like, "You could do your thing. I'll go coach something." Because I was the OC. I was like, "I want you guys to be comfortable. You go do your thing. I'll go do where we don't have a coach." We didn't have a quarterback coach. I said, "Screw it. I'll do it." And I loved it, and then I hated it.
Yeah,
The funnest part was the competitions I do with the throwing the dumpster, the garbage cans, and
oh yeah, yeah,
but then I'd always peek over at the O line when they're throwing because the warm ups were throwing mechanics and all that, and I'd look over at the O line like, are they doing their job?
yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's like I said, it's a totally different world between a lot of other positions, and I think that's part of the reason why O line coaches in particular are kind of a special group. You see the hot football chat on Twitter and stuff, and you see, I think, I just kind of from what I've observed, it seems like OL coaches are usually kind of the most proactive guys, when it comes to putting clinics together and stuff, or getting together and talk ball. I guess everybody's just trying to share and get better at their craft.
yeah, when I first started this podcast, like I told you, it was an interview, and I talked to certain O line coaches, and I came up with a stupid question, and I'm going to tell you why it's kind of stupid, but I almost had a point. I would ask coaches, "Is there a shortage of like true O line coaches now?" Because I'm at my 5th high school right now in 12 I'm doing this for 12 years. I'm my 5th high school now. And the last 2 brought me on because they said, "We need a true O-line coach." We've had linebackers coaches go try to do it or whatever. We need a guy that played O-line, coached O-line. We need this.
Yeah,
And I started to think about it because everybody that wants to talk to me to hire me is like, "We need an O-line coach." That's his O-line. And I'm like, "Is there a shortage of O-line coaches?" And I'll tell you what other coaches told me. Some said no. They're just like, it just depends on where you're at. Some said, well, think about it. Back in the day, O-line coaches were the OCs, kind of, because
mm-hmm.
they looked at the run game. Now you're seeing quarterback coaches kind of OCs because, we've gone to these spread offenses and RPOs. And so some said yes, like, and they also said because it's difficult because you have
Yeah,
5 things going on at the same time.
no doubt.
Where, whereas, yeah, quarterback, I've coached quarterbacks. It's hard, but like if you're an RPO, it's like, hey, you're just reading this or this. As an
Yeah,
O-line coach, it's like, what technique are they in? Where was the linebacker? The footwork,
right.
double teaming. So, do you think it's a shortage, or am I just stupid, or is it like it's too hard?
I don't know if there's necessarily a shortage. I mean, I think offensive line is a position that has really undergone a renaissance the last few years in terms of the verbiage that we use and how we teach things. I think the biggest problem is that there are too many guys out there that want easy fixes for things, and that they think that you can fix issues along the offensive line with simple solutions like, oh, well, just go hit the sled or go get under the chute, or that's not how it works. They used to think that several years ago before I started getting involved in this, but I think the biggest problem is people try to find simple solutions for problems that are not as simple as they appear on the surface. And so I think that's the biggest issue. And I think a lot of people don't have the time or the patience or the energy or whatever you may want to call it to kind of study and get in and acknowledge that, offensive line play is about movement. It's about moving efficiently. And you have to figure out a way to go and move another human body. And yeah, I mean, you can get in all the, you got to have a get after him attitude, and you got to be tough and all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to give your kids actual tangible feedback on how to get their job done and fire off the ball or whatever, or get low. That's not, in my opinion, that's not tangible feedback. That's not something that you can correct and demonstrate. But it sounds nice. It's, to me, it's no different than, when a wide receiver drops the ball or whatever, what's the most common thing people say? Catch the ball. Well, obviously, obviously, why didn't he catch the ball? Was his route not correct? Was his hand placement not correct? Were his eyes not in the right place? Like, what's tangible feedback that you can use to fix the problem? And so I think that's the biggest problem is, like I said, people want these immediate fixes to problems that you can't necessarily fix immediately. And sometimes people don't like to hear that, but that's just kind of the nature of the position. Offensive line is a position that involves skills and movements that are unlike any other position in football. And therefore it requires a different level of coaching and a different level of training that I think some people have been kind of reluctant to get on. I think fortunately you're seeing a lot more coaches embrace the kind of science behind O-line play, if you want to call it that. But I think that, like I said, the biggest problem is people are, wanting easy fixes, and it doesn't always work that way.
Right. There's a couple of coaches up here. They run fist football, so it's just O-line and D-line training.
Yeah.
And I had the guy that started on. I just released the episode yesterday, and one of the questions we were talking about, he goes, "We work with every O-line. So if they play wing T in their high school and they come to us, we train them on what their coach wants us to train them on." Which I think, he goes, "But there's a science behind this. There's a lot of flexibility. We do a lot of stretching, like your ankles, your hips, your knees. Like,
Yeah.
people don't think about that." So like you just said, what did we hear when we played in football? Get low. Why aren't you getting low?
Yeah.
And I still do it too. Once in a while, you might slip it out. Like, why aren't you getting low? But why aren't they? Are they stiff in the hips? Is it this?
Right.
Is it that? And we have to, as coaches, be like, okay, if they're stiff, then during the off season, what do we do to get them not to be so stiff?
Mm-hmm.
Is it lifting heavy weight? Because everybody's into that sprint based stuff. And I just had a guy, Coach Dixon. There's a coach here up in Illinois. He's probably 20 minutes from me, Coach Tony Holler. He's a track coach, and he started Feed the Cats thing, which kind of like that.
I love that stuff.
And then I just had Coach Dixon on, who was really involved in that, on here. And he talked to me about it. He goes, I asked him, when we all played sports, it was this group goes over here and does deadlift. Well, then he said, well, what if this one kid isn't supposed to be doing deadlift that day? Like, what if it's just not working? Have him go do something else. So with O-line, if you have one tackle that's is struggling with the hips, what in the weight room can we do to get him to fix it? But you don't have to make the whole offensive line do it. What if the rest of them don't have any problems and they're getting low? He needs to go do something. And as coaches, maybe that's too hard because you're worried about 5 guys starting, and then you probably have 5 guys right behind them that you have to worry about. Other coaches like, I got 3 quarterbacks. That's all I got to worry about. So I think it's a lot of work that some people don't want to do. And then also, we don't get talked about in the paper. Like, that's the other thing is you get no recognition.
Yeah, it's not exactly the most glorious position, but I think one of the good things about social media is, we've kind of been able to sort of create our own buzz in terms of the offensive line coaching community, which like I said, in my opinion, just from my observations, I think the OL coaching community is probably maybe the most active on Twitter. With the hot football chat and stuff. And, obviously there are other positions that, do their own thing or whatever. But I think for us, it's been a great opportunity to put our guys in the limelight. I try to show off my kids every chance I get. And I think that's what it's all about. Obviously, you want to use it to grow your platform or whatever, network and stuff like that. But I think also you have an obligation to promote your kids and show off your kids. And I think if you're not necessarily doing that, then you're not taking full advantage of a platform you may have.
Right. And then you want to give back to coaches. Like, there's sometimes where we were all young. I mean, I'm 12 years into, I don't know if I'm young or old yet or right in the middle,
Yeah.
but there's some coaches that'll give you nothing. You can message them and they're not going to tell you one thing.
Yeah.
There's some coaches that might say, "Hey, I have this certification, pay $800, you'll find out," which I'm not talking bad about anybody. That's what they do. I'm not judging nobody because I have no right to judge anybody.
Yeah.
So I feel like, how do we make coaches better? Well, we have to give information. You don't have to give and coach or to Coach Mackey, because I love Coach Mackey. Don't give the secret sauce. You don't have to give the exact secret sauce, but like there's things you can give out and support the kids. And like your kids will love seeing that too. If they go on there like, oh my gosh, Coach Timmerman's talking about how good we blocked. Like, look at that pancake. Like, then they're
Yeah.
excited, like then they get kind
Yeah.
of excited. And like this coach cares and wants to promote the team and all that. And then a young coach that gets into it this year might be like, let me go look on Twitter and see if I can find something. Oh, look at this. I didn't know anything about that. And this is free. This is free knowledge.
Yeah. Twitter's been huge. Like, I mean, I've been able to connect with a lot of people and find some great stuff that I've been able to incorporate and all that stuff. And obviously that's kind of how I first found out about LaCharles Bentley and offensive line performance and all that stuff. And that's what really kind of got me going into all that stuff is some of the guys I've met through Twitter and just being able to have a group chat with some of the guys and just throw out a question and be like, all right, hey, here's a problem I'm having. Have you guys encountered this problem? If so, how do you fix it? Or hey guys, I did this today. I thought it was really good. Maybe you want to use it next time or whatever. And so I think it's the more, like, the old saying is like, the more eyes you have on a problem, the more brains you have working on it, you have more possibilities for solutions and stuff. And so, you kind of got to be selective sometimes about who you go to or whatever, because like you said, sometimes guys are not going to give you much or they're going to do this or do that. But I've been pretty fortunate to have guys that reach out to me and share plenty of ideas, and it's been a very, very useful tool, that's for sure. And it's definitely something that I wish I would have had sooner, but fortunately it's here now.
Yeah, because when I started coaching, it was you had to ask people. And Twitter was there. And here's the funny thing. Me and my friend made Twitter when it first came out to make fun of my cousin who made it because we were being ironic, or, that's because we're in high school, like, or whatever. And I had it. So I've had it ever since. My account's been there since it started,
Yeah.
which is crazy, but I never touched it. It was like I didn't open it for 3 years. And then somebody said, "Hey, go on there because I'm finding football stuff." So I got back on there and I was like, "Oh, sports this, football that. I coach basketball, like basketball this."
Right.
And I'm like, I feel bad for old Steve because he couldn't find this. Like, you had to buy the books, you had to go talk to coaches, you had to drive somewhere to watch it. And now you've got online clinics, you've got the stuff people put clips out. Like, I know you might put clips out. And I got, you look at them and it's crazy where football has come and gone. No more trading film on the tape. We had to
Yeah.
drive and do that.
Yeah. Luckily I never had to partake in that tradition.
I did it twice. When I first got into coaching, it was DVDs.
Mm-hmm.
And you had to drive to do it. Now I'm from a small town, so like all the schools you play, I think the farthest was like 45 minutes, but you met halfway. So it's like, oh, I gotta drive 20 minutes. I'll grab food. Like, I'll go to a restaurant while I'm out. But yeah, you gotta be like, here's this, you take this, go watch it. And then I did that like twice. That was one of my jobs. Like once or twice I have to go do that.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I went to a next high school, that's where I found out about Huddle. I was like, oh, this is amazing. Like, this is game changing. And well, that's like where Coach Dearman from Kansas a couple years ago,
Mm-hmm.
he came out with his book, and this is the crazy thing. I had messaged him a couple times about things. He had the book out. He told me about it, and I said, when it's in the budget and I get permission, I will go get it. 10 minutes later, he goes, what's your email? And I gave him my email. 5 seconds later, it's in my email. He goes, there you go. Don't tell my wife. I'm like, there you go. And I'm like, that's amazing, because he was at Arkansas Tech at the time.
Yeah.
And then What else did he do? He sent me a couple other things. I was like, "This is crazy." And then some of the things he goes, "Do you want some quarterback looking stuff?" And I was like, "Sure, send it to me on Huddle." There you go.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Coach Dearman. He's a great guy. He's really like the first guy I really started to study with the whole RPOs thing or whatever. And he was speaking at a clinic I was at one time, and we go back to the hotel. First of all, he stayed after his time to address any questions or whatever that anybody had, which was great. And then after later that night, everybody goes back to the hotel, and he just happened to be staying at the same hotel, and he sat down in the lobby of the hotel with several of us coaches. We just ordered a couple pizzas or whatever, and he sat down there and sat on and drew up stuff on a little mini whiteboard and talked with us for probably 45 minutes or an hour after the clinic was over. So he's definitely a good dude, and definitely somebody I've learned from. But just kind of have, like you said, just that the fact that that's a possibility now is, and not just digitally, and that you can just message somebody and not have to necessarily drive out there to Kansas or wherever this particular person you may want to talk to may be, is very very useful, very handy.
I like things like that because no offense to some of these clinics, some are turned into, "Look at what I can do with Division I athletes," or whatever the case might be. I like the coaches that show you the film and they're drawing on the whiteboard, and they're drawing on Huddle, and then they stay afterwards and take questions. There's some guys that are there for a reason, and you can figure it out very quickly that they're there for a reason. Then there's coaches that are there that are very humble, like a Coach Timmerman is like, "I'm gonna go sit there and do this because I want someone to do that for me." So I always told myself if I make it big, which will never happen, if I ever did, that's the kind of person I'd be. I would
Yeah,
draw it up on the if I ever did a clinic, it'd be tell you guys everything. I don't care. And then I'm gonna go out to the lobby because that's what's turned into is clinics. We just sit in the lobbies and meet coaches and talk. That's what it's turned into.
yeah,
Besides the online stuff, which is fantastic. Like this is a new norm, is the Zoom and stuff. That's a new norm.
absolutely.
But I do miss sitting in the hotel lobbies or whatever, and there's hundreds of coaches, and you can just go up to somebody and start talking. Like,
Yeah, definitely. It's good. I always enjoyed going to the Glacier clinics for part of that. Just kind of network and see some guys you might not normally get to see during the season, obviously because they're busy when you're busy because they're coaching as well. So yeah, definitely gonna miss the in person stuff. I'm assuming that's going to be at a minimum this particular spring, but Zoom stuff is still good for sure.
yeah, I forgot to mention this. You guys won a state championship for your guys' season, right?
Yeah, we had a pretty good year. We went undefeated. We were 14-0. We won a state championship. We finished number one in the state. We're top 5 in the country in a few national polls. So it was a very good year for us, man. The kids, they just came to work every day, and it's a credit to them. We didn't necessarily do anything particularly special, as far as coaching stuff. We just try to put them in the best position to be successful because we do have very good players. And they did exactly what we asked them to do. They didn't flinch. They played hard. They worked hard every day. And obviously, dealing with all this extra stuff could have been very easy for a lot of people just to kind of fold the tent and say, well, it's this year is doesn't count or whatever you might want to say. But they just showed up to work every day, and their work paid off.
Well, congratulations on a state title. Not many of us can sniff a state title in high school, but that's pretty
Yeah,
cool.
it's been good. I've been fortunate. This is my second one in
Okay.
7 years, so I've been very fortunate to be at some strong programs and learned a lot from a lot of guys. And like I said, it's just mainly a credit to the kids and our head coach, Coach Carter. He did a good job just keeping everybody on track and giving having a plan for everything that came forward. And we're gonna do it this way, and we're gonna do it this way. And the kids lived up to it. We held a certain standard, and we knew they wanted to be successful. And so we just kind of laid it out for them. Say, well, if you want to be successful, this is how you got to do it. And Coach Carter kind of laid that standard out for everybody. And kids did a great job of just rising up and meeting every challenge that came to them every Friday night.
So is that a normal season for you guys? Like if you won a state title 14 games, so you guys had like a full season, no missing games?
A normal full season in Georgia is 15 games, so we missed
Okay.
out on one game. We were actually at one point we were down to 6 games in our regular season because of cancellations from COVID and stuff like that, and we were able to pick up 3 out of the 4. So a normal season is 15 games, but we were able to play 14.
Yeah, in Illinois we usually get 9, and then we get 4 weeks. So you get 3 rounds of the playoffs and the state title. If we have football, it's going to be 6 or 7 games and no more. Like you can't schedule.
Uh-huh.
We don't even have a postseason. It's not even scheduled to have a postseason. They
Oh,
said
wow.
it would have to be us. It's up to us as schools to do it, I guess.
That's crazy.
Like you could get. They said maybe 2 weeks,
Hmm.
and so well because before COVID, Illinois we do conferences, so
Yeah.
it's conferences, not regions or anything, and we have 1A through 8A. And right before COVID, it got passed that we were going to switch to regions because everybody else does it. So they're like, let's do it. So they passed it. But when they passed it, there was no rough draft because we all said, well, what's the rough draft going to look like? What do schools go to where? They're like, oh, we haven't figured that out yet. And so then it got brought up again. And they're like, well, since you guys can't figure it out, it got voted on again. It got shot down. So we went back to conferences. Well, when COVID hit, guess what? It got put on the table again? Regions because they don't know. Well, now it's just conferences. So we're going to play 6 conference games, maybe 7. If we have a season, it's
Yeah.
quite possible we don't. And not to get too political, but like there's reports here in Illinois of kids taking their lives, and I just can't take it. But that's a whole nother like it just happened yesterday.
Mm.
And that's why sports matter so much. I'm really glad you guys had a season because sports mean more to kids than anybody knows. So when I hear you guys like at 14 games, I'm like, yes, I'm glad these schools are getting these games. Like I'm jealous, but I'm not mad. I'm like, yes, I want coaches and kids to get these games so bad.
Yeah,
Because it
we
means
were
a
very
lot.
fortunate. We were very fortunate to get some stuff done, and I think that's a credit, like I said, to it's a credit to our athletic association, and helping things out. It's a credit to our school board and our parents and everybody involved, really just kind of doing what they needed to do to make sure that we were able to have a season. Because, like I said, it was important to our kids, and our kids knew that we could have a pretty special year if things worked out the right way, and so. We were really hoping we were going to have a season. We weren't 100% sure. Obviously, back in the spring they sent us all home. We didn't get spring football. Our summer workouts were extremely limited. And then we're supposed to have a preseason scrimmage, and then they cancel that. And that was kind of when we were all like, oh, that's it.
Mhm.
If they're going to cancel the preseason scrimmage, there's no way they're going to turn around and let us play. But they did. So we were fortunate, but we were hanging on a thread for a little bit right there for a little while. At least we thought we were. So we're very fortunate to have been able to play. That's for sure. And I'm hoping that schools and kids that did not get to play in the fall do get to play in the spring, or at least in some form or fashion.
Yeah, we look at states like where you guys are at, we're like, well, they can do it. Why can't we? I said this from the get go. We need a football coach or some coach in charge as a governor, and someone they said because we could all work together. We could all learn how to work together. Not my way's better than your way. So I just hope that we can look at what you guys did. Like, what did that state do? Can we implement what they did and use it? Um, because we're in an argument now where we're trying to get basketball even going. It hasn't started because I'm not going to get long winded. So they made 4 seasons for us. So they had fall, which was swimming, cross country, tennis, and that stuff. So they got to have their fall season. Then you had your winter season, which was basketball and all that. It was supposed to start in November, December. Well, it hasn't started yet. Football and soccer and volleyball were going to start February 15th as like a spring. So you had
Mm-hmm.
fall, winter, spring, then you had summer, May through the end of June, which would be track and baseball. That was the plan. Now they're talking about pushing everything to stop in August.
Wow.
And then our football season wouldn't start till September sometime
Wow.
again.
Yeah, that's tough.
But that's a quick turnaround too. That's what scares me. Like if we do have football and it ends in May, a quick turnaround to come back in August or September. That's huge.
Yeah, that was kind of my biggest concern at first when people were talking about playing in the spring is, well, how does that affect the next season? Like, are you going to play football? Are you going to play a schedule of football in the spring and then turn around and come back in July and August and start start hitting again? That's a lot of wear and tear on kids' bodies and stuff. I think it's important that they have that time to recover. And so, talking 3 to 4 months is not exactly a lot of recovery time.
No, and we can't get in the weight room. Like in Illinois, depends on your school district. There's some school districts that are allowing kids in the weight room. Some up here because I'm up in the western suburbs of Chicago. No, I don't live in Chicago, guys. I don't live in Chicago. I'm in a suburb, but I'm from central Illinois, though. But I've lived here for 2.5 years. We can't, it just depends on your district. If your
Yeah.
district says the numbers are too high, you don't go to the weight room. So my big concern is we haven't get these kids in the weight room. I'm worried about injuries in February,
Yeah.
big time. Because in Chicago, guess what happens in February? There's ice and snow.
Mm-hmm.
That's what happens. So I'm worried. Like I took a new job in June like an idiot, but I thought COVID this wouldn't be what it was. I only saw the kids 3 or 4 weeks in person, and we just
Yeah.
did body weight stuff. We couldn't do the weight room, so I'm worried about injuries. But like we said before, that's why I'm looking at the sprint-based stuff. I'm like, is there a way to try to help these
Yeah.
injuries out looking at the sprint-based stuff? Because that opened my mind up because one of my friends, he's like, Indiana does it. Look at what Indiana's done. Alabama does the sprint-based stuff now, and they're getting stronger as the year goes on.
Yeah.
So I really started to look at that. I'm like, if these guys are doing it and high schools are doing it, why can't we do it? The only thing, and Coach Dixon might hate me for this, he said they don't wear pads on Tuesdays. They're just in helmets. And I said, whoa, 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 you're not going to get me fully on board with that, but I get what you're saying. Like,
Well, I mean, for us, for us on Mondays and Wednesdays, we were helmets only. We didn't wear shoulder pads Mondays and Wednesdays. So, I think that's something that helped. I think it's something that helped our kids make it through the whole season, all this extra stuff. I know the whole, the idea behind football is you got to get out there and you got to hit each other and you got to be physical and all that stuff. Well, we wore helmets only 2 days a week. And then we went shorts and shoulder pads Tuesdays and Thursdays. The only time we put full pads on was Friday night. And I feel like it helped our guys. I thought they were fresh all season because we're not banging on them for 4 months straight. And I'm not saying everybody has to go out there and just beat the crap out of each other, but I think whether it was just even a mental thing as well. But I think it was something that really helped our kids, and I think it's kind of counter to what a lot of football traditionalists would say and believe in. But I loved it. I think our kids loved it. Only having helmets on for a couple of days, and like I said, I think it kept them fresh, saved their legs, and kept them from getting banged on more than they needed. Honestly.
well, now I feel like a jackass. But the reason why is because I told him that one school I was at the first time I've seen something like that. I went to a different school. Mondays we were just helmets because we're just doing walkthroughs. Tuesdays we wore helmets and shoulder pads, but in shorts. And the reason why we were in shoulder pads was just a safety thing,
Yeah.
just in case. And then that way, for offensive line purposes, we could work on more hand placement because tags are good, but just where I was at, that's what he wanted to do. We weren't hitting, but it was a safety thing. Like they could really work on stuff with shoulder pads on. We weren't banging, we weren't tackling, we were just safety. And then Wednesday was the hard hit day or whatever. Like not hard hit, but you could put on the full gear, and that's where we really got work done. Thursday, back to helmets and shoulder pads. It was just walkthrough, but he just did it for them to get a feel. Now, as the season went on, we took the shoulder pads off. Like, okay, now they're tired. And then Friday was full go. And Coach Dixon says he calls it caging them up. He was like, Wednesday, we do our full hit. And then Thursday, we go back to helmets. And then Friday, they're caged. It's like you have to unleash them from that cage to go. Like, we get to hit somebody, so they go.
Yeah.
Because you can kind of build toughness in kids, but like the hard hitting thing, they just have to figure out. You can't coach that.
Well, for us, it was kind of interesting because like we practiced with pads in every drill, in every situation we did because that was, part of our county's policy, I guess you could say, is that they wanted us to use pads and stuff. So the only time my guys actually got to hit a physical person to block a human body was on Friday night. And so like you said, I think our kids were jacked up for that. I think they were ready to go on Friday nights to actually be able to make contact with a human body and to be physical in a way that they were not able to be in practice for, like I said, for those various reasons. But like you said, I think there's something to, changing up our thoughts about traditional practice. I know a lot of colleges do, they call it No Sweat Thursday, where they use, a lot of times the traditional thought was to have the day before the game be your walkthrough day, your no contact day or whatever to get them rested up or whatever. But they talked about, using that 2 days before the game as your rest day. Then the day before the game, get their central nervous system primed up and ready to go, get their muscles firing. And then that way on game day, they're ready to play. And that was something we did here. Another thing that we did here that I like that we didn't do at my old school was we lift on game day. It's nothing crazy. We're just going to put 45s on the bar and do 135 and we do some various stuff, but we do a lift. We get their muscles firing, we get their central nervous system activated, we get their body ready to go. And I think it helps us. I think it gives us a little bit of an edge. I'm not sure how many of our opponents do that or how many teams across the state of Georgia do it, but I think that game day lift is something that gives us an edge because it gets kind of like you said, it gets our bodies going, kind of gets the body thinking like, all right, I'm going to be active today.
Right. That's interesting. I didn't think about lifting on game day.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to have to take that to my head coach. Like, what if you think about this? Because we're worried about injuries. That's what we're all thinking about. So that's why we're looking at the sprint-based stuff. I'm just going to keep saying sprint-based. People don't know. It's not heavy lifting. It's not like, hey, let's squat 600 pounds. It's more about generating power. It's more about speed. My friend that lives here in Illinois, he's big on it now. He's the head girls track coach and he's the OC. He said, if you watch one of my track practices and somebody drives by, they're going to think we're not doing nothing because they sprint really hard and then they sit down for like 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah,
they
you have to focus on rest and recovery.
Right. He goes, people probably drive by and think we're going to have the worst track team in the state because we do this. And he's like, my girls went from like 18 miles per hour to 19 or 20 miles per hour from doing this.
Yeah.
And then like, if you listen to like Nick Saban and them now, I think Wednesday is like their hard sprint. Like that's where they really work. And then Thursday and Friday, like you said, they don't really do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then Saturday rolls around, they do whatever they need to do and they're ready to go. And that's why they're fast.
Yeah.
Like they've rested. There's numbers out there that left tackle for them who I want the Bears to draft. He's stronger now than when at the beginning of the season. He is generating more power than at the beginning of the season. And like back in the day, I remember being a player by week 9 or 10, we're tired.
Yeah.
Because that old school thinking. And now you talk to people that do it. The school I was at where we did some of this stuff, we went 10-1. Now we went 10-1 because of the kids.
Yeah.
But they weren't tired as the season went on because we had to play hard-hitting teams. Like we played a team that had kids getting recruited by Michigan and Wisconsin and all that, and we beat them 17-13 because, and I'll never forget this, their nose guard was getting recruited by Michigan. Jim Harbaugh was recruiting him. He had his hands on his hips taking deep breaths, and my O-line was walking up there all fine. Like, hey. Now he was a stud. He was the Rock. He was the Rock, just like 5'10" or 6 foot. Like he was just a man. And we weren't doing nothing fancy. I would just trap him and run away from him. But he was tired. And I'm like, okay, there's something about not hitting on full-on hitting Tuesdays, Wednesday being a tough day, Thursday being relaxed, and then we go out there Friday. Now your guys' way works too, but for us, it was like, hey, we're not as tired.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's something to be said about it. I think and again, I'm not as educated or as knowledgeable as a lot of these other guys that, kind of originate some of this stuff. But I think the rest and recovery phase is probably the most underrated part of training. Because, I think that's Coach Holler, he talks about, don't let today ruin tomorrow. And so I think it's something that really benefited us. And like I said, I just felt like our kids were fresh all season. I felt like we continued to get stronger. I felt like we were just as fast by the end of the season as we were at the beginning of the season. I don't think our legs were, weary or anything. And I think that's, within practice, you kind of have to structure that as well, especially with OL guys. Those guys are carrying a lot more weight than a lot of the other guys on the team. And so I think you kind of have to know when to go fast at practice and know when to slow it down at practice and have, a teach period or something like that and when to go full speed. But I felt like our guys this year were just as fast and just as strong, if not faster and a little bit stronger towards the end of the season as they were when we started.
Now, will you guys put them in because when I was talking to Coach Dixon, and as coaches, you think some of us do this and some of us don't think about it. Do you put them in really tough situational things? Because he's talking about being tough is hitting, but being tough is when there's 50 seconds left in the game or a minute left in the game and you have to score or you have to stop them. that's when you put them in tough situations where just at the drop of a I talked to a coach here in Illinois. I don't know if you know him, Coach Derek Leonard. He's won 8 of the last 10 state titles here in Illinois in 4A. At the drop of a whistle, they will go straight to a 2-minute, under 2-minute drill, and they have to score. And it's just random. You never know when it's coming, and it's
Yeah.
just a situational thing of, like, now you're in a tough situation. And I was like, "There's a reason why he's won 8 of the last 10 state titles, because his kids are prepared." So for O-line, do you put them in, like, a tough situation that way? Like, situation like, this is the time where you gotta be tough.
Yeah. I mean, I think toughness. People like to throw that word around, but I think toughness comes from being confident in your ability to do your job, and that comes from both a physical standpoint and a mental standpoint. You can yell at a kid, "Hey, be tough," or whatever, or "Go hit him," or whatever. Well, if that young man or young lady or whatever sport it is, if they're not confident in their physical ability to get that job done, of course they're going to be hesitant. Same thing on the mental side of things. If they're not 100% sure about what their assignment is or what they need to do on this particular route or whatever, they're probably not going to go as fast.
Mhm.
And yeah, the old saying was, well, if you're going to make a mistake full speed. Well, I mean, that's just not the nature of kids, or humans in general. When we're not sure about something, we're hesitant. It's very rare to get somebody that goes, well, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to go run straight ahead full speed, or whatever it is. So I think toughness is something that's not trained by yelling at kids or beating on them or getting them to do this or whatever, but getting them confident in their job and their ability to perform their job both mentally and physically. And like you said, I think part of that comes from putting them in situations like that. Like on Tuesdays, we do third and short and third and long situations against our starting. It's best on best, starting O versus starting D. And we do a goal line situation as well. And so we do that every Tuesday. And so that's kind of our time to compete against each other. On Mondays, we do a bandit period, which is boom. As soon as pre-practice is over, we start practices with 6 plays of first O versus first D, ones on ones. And so those are periods where, it's fast, it's situational, like I said, third short, third long. Can you execute, in this particular scenario?
Right, I think we're moving away from days of gassers,
Yeah.
I think. Um, I've seen coaches like, "Are we getting soft because 'cause we're not doing that?" And I said, "Well, in the summer, there's times to run, I think, and I'm probably wrong, but in the season, I think there's no time to do that anymore. It's practice needs to go fast in those situations because that's where, like you said, when are they gonna play fast? When they're comfortable in that type of situation. So at first, it's gonna look bad. Then the next time they do it, they're a little more comfortable, they're more comfortable. Days of gassers are kinda leaving because I was that coach young, coordinator 23 or 24 years old, and I would be that guy. "Hey, why don't you go run around the football field until I'm tired," you know, to make a point. And then I talked to some coaches doing this podcast, and they said, "You know what you should have done? Hey, you're not starting. Sit over here by me." And that's gonna change it.
Yeah, I don't think we, like, as the season was going, I don't think we ever ran gassers as a team for conditioning.
Mhm,
That's just not something we did. Our conditioning comes from how we practice. Like if you
mhm.
come to our practices, you're going to see, like, we're flying around for the most part. Now, obviously, there's going to be times where you slow it down and teach, but for the most part, we are flying around to practice. I feel like we get a lot done in 2 hours. That's pretty much that's how long we're out there. 2 hours, 10 minutes tops. But that includes pre-practice now too. That
Mhm.
includes a good 15 minutes of pre-practice or whatever. So really, it's our actual practice is maybe an hour and 45 minutes, and that's on the long days. And so, I think our conditioning comes from how we practice. It comes from the intensity level that we bring to practice and stuff, and the effort in which we want to get things done, and the speed and the tempo of which we want to get things done.
Right, and that comes from coaches are planned right before practice, so you already know what's gonna go on,
Yeah,
from watching film, from doing all that stuff. And at a school I was at, we never filmed practice, not one offense or defense. So guess
That's
what would
tough.
happen? Yeah, guess what would happen? I'm OC. I'm calling plays. O-line coach stops. Well, hold on a second. They didn't block that right, and I'm losing it because I'm like, we should film this, and then I go back and look at it later.
Yeah.
Like we don't. In about the 4th or 5th week, I said, "Why are we not filming practice?" Guess what I got told? Who's going to watch it? That was the situation I was in.
That's wild.
And I get mad because I'm like, we ask these kids to give us everything they've got all the time, school, life, football. Why are we not doing the same? This not filming does not help them because that kid is going to forget what happened.
Yeah.
So you need to watch it and be like, hey, look at your footwork here, look at your footwork here. And then in a game, I told him, I said, do you think I can go up to the ref and say, hey, hold on a second, can I stop this for 30 seconds to correct a run play? It's not realistic.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. I mean, we film everything. I watch practice. Every day. As soon as we get into the field house after practice, I'm watching practice film. And I think that's another thing that, I mean, allows us to go fast is we're not stopping a team period in the middle of the period to correct something. Very, very rarely would that happen. But I mean, we're trying to knock 18, 20 plays out in 10 minutes or so. And that includes like subbing people in and doing things of that sort. So we move at a pretty good pace. We're not necessarily as fast as I know some like hyper tempo teams or whatever, but I feel like we move at a really good pace and we're not stopping, in the middle. You just got to, I also think that's important. Why it's important to have, coaching cues that you can use with your kids. That's just one or two words that tells them something. Now, obviously, sometimes you may need to go more in depth, with it after practice if it's a schematical issue or whatever. But I think that's important for maybe technique or stuff like that. Have those coaching cues you can give to your kids on the fly, and have a language that you speak with them so that when you say something, even though it may be very short, it may be just one word or two, but they know what it means. That doesn't necessarily mean they'll get it fixed immediately right then because you said that word, but at least that's something now they know to think about to fix maybe on the next play or next time that technique comes up. But I can't imagine not filming practice. It seems like it would be such a huge disadvantage, and especially if you're going to stop practice to correct things in the middle of a team period, slows everything down.
Yeah, because I originally went back and coached in my high school that I coached since I was 18. So I coached at my high school. Now that was in the days where you necessarily didn't have the end zone camera up to film. So at those days, it wasn't thought about.
Yeah.
Then the next school I went to where technology, huddle and all this technology had caught up. That's the only school that's never done that. So my first high school, I give a pass because that just wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Especially at a small school. A school had 300 kids. So like at a school like that, it wasn't a thing. Then the next school I went to was 1,000 or 800 to 1,000, somewhere in there. We had the technology. We had the end zone camera. We had this. We had that. That's the only school that's never done it. I've been in 5 high schools. So the first school is a pass. The next 4, that one didn't do it. The next 3, I've coached at 2. The one, we're waiting for a season, but we're going to do it.
Right.
He's like, filming practice is essential.
Yeah.
And so it was tough. Don't get me wrong, especially as an OC. Like, I think that's why my hair's gone from those seasons because it was just like I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, this is as an OC, because we were no huddle, I have to signal it in. So I'm like signaling it in. To have it stop and them correct it, I was losing my mind.
Yeah.
Because like he wanted to be an up tempo team, but I wasn't comfortable because the school I was coaching at was right next to Eastern Illinois. So I helped out spring ball with Dino Babers and Jimmy. So he was there. So guess what was on the rage? That Baylor 10-second, 12-second snap.
Gotcha.
Guess what the head coach wanted to do? Oh, we got to snap the ball in 12 seconds.
Yeah.
And I said at that point, I'm just calling plays to call plays.
Right.
At that point. No offense to Babers because they're playing for us. At a high school level for us, it was just like, I'm going to call plays to call plays at that point. And so he wanted to be up tempo. And I said, okay, we're going to try. So we're trying in practice. And if you stop it and talk to the kid for a minute, there it goes. You're not going to be ready for it.
Very hard to be up tempo when you're stopping in the middle of your team period.
Yeah, it's tough. And I asked the coaches, I'm like, do you guys ever stop? And they said the only time we stop, like you said, if they do have to stub, like if you want to get your second string, you do stop. Or if the head coach doesn't like what he sees, he might stop, give a message for 30 seconds to a minute, and then you're back.
Right.
It's just like calling a timeout in a game. So that's how they look at it. Like What do you see coaches do if they don't like what they see? They call a timeout, give us raw, you don't want to hear what they're saying speech because it's probably not TV friendly, and then you go back out there,
Right.
which I like, and that's all I've ever been around since then. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, we went 10-1 was the first time. I was like, oh, maybe there's a reason why, because it was the kids. Don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but we were putting them in situations to be successful. We were making it game like so they're prepared. And so when they would come off the field, they would tell us what they're seeing, and we're able to adjust because we could all speak the same language because we
Right.
knew what was going on. Then the next school, they hadn't won 4 games since 2000. We went 4-5, which to some people doesn't sound good, but it's a rebuilding program. I show
Mhm.
up, we do all those things, we go 4-5. 6 points away from making the playoffs. So we would have scored 6 more points, we would have been in the playoffs, and we went 5-4. So I'm like, these things work. Like we're not. It's not. So yeah, I'm ranting, but yeah, that was a tough couple of years not filming practice, and I thought that was the norm after a while. I was like, oh well,
Right.
not.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine that. It's something that for us, I mean, we show the kids. It's in a normal year. We have our weight training class during fourth period, and that's the longest period of the day because that combines with lunch and it combines with an advisement period. And so we, like I said, in a normal year, we would have enough time to lift the kids and then also have position meetings with them. So I think that's invaluable, being able to show the kids, being able to let them watch themselves on film, maybe the day after or something and correct something and things of that sort. So definitely think that's something that's needed in today's game for sure.
Is that a normal thing for high schools where you guys are at, like an athletic period or whatever that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had it at the two schools I've been at when I was at Northside, my first 5 years, we had all of our football players in a weight training period. And then we have 2 periods here at Grayson. We have our third period, which is where some of our freshmen and our younger kids lift, and then fourth period is where our older guys lift.
Yeah, in Illinois, we don't have spring football. Like if we do have a season, it'll be the first time in Illinois history probably that football is in the spring.
Yeah.
Um, some high schools do have that, but some don't. And it's funny, the ones that do are successful.
Oh
The
yeah,
ones that
it's invaluable.
the ones that don't, there are some successful schools that don't. But you see a lot of people pushing for it now. So I'm just jealous. Like you guys have it. I know Texas has it. There's a handful of schools in Illinois that do, but it's just not a thing. I think because there's no spring football. I think that's why. Um,
Yeah,
the only
not being able to lift and meet during the season I feel like would be a really big disadvantage.
Yeah, I mean, in Illinois, you have to call it open weight room. So, like in a normal year, our state title games are the 2 days after Thanksgiving. So that Friday, 1A through 4A play, and then 5 through 8A play on Saturday. But like if your season's done in October, you can have open weight room. You can't call it football. You call it open weight room after school. And the reason why is so that way you prove like, oh, other people can show up.
Hmm.
Now, realistically, we all know it's football, but you have to say open weight room.
Well, for us, it's just a class on their schedule. It's just a
Yeah,
weight training class.
because they
And
don't have that.
any kid in the school can have a weight training class. Um, so it's for us. It's like it's just part of PE and health and stuff like that. It's just a weight training class. Like our baseball team, I believe our baseball team has a weight training class 6 period. So it's not necessarily just football specific. It just happens that we're able to, our admin works with us and we're able to get our football kids in a weight training class during fourth period. So it's not even necessarily football specific for us. It's just it's a class on the curriculum. It's a weight training class.
It just works out that way.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, okay. Because I know in Texas it's football weightlifting for them, but that's a whole different.
Yeah, that may be a whole different thing.
Yeah, that because it's Texas. It's like
Yeah.
football is life.
Yeah. Everything's different in Texas.
Yeah, but like some schools in Illinois don't have a weightlifting class, and if they do, it's not where you can take your football kids and do something else. It's this, and so that's why for Illinois, that's why coaches have to have this open weight room after school.
Hmm.
Now some do, some don't. It just depends, and it's frustrating. But like you couldn't watch film with them, and you could a little bit open weight room, but like you got kids playing basketball in this and that, so you can't do it. Um, and then there's no spring football, so it's not like you can do it then.
Right.
Now you can't now you have to let me know what you guys did. I think now with Zoom, you could do it more now. We're like, hey guys, I know you're in basketball, but maybe on one day take a half hour and watch film or whatever.
So what we did was we used fourth period because most of our kids stayed at home. Most of our we had the hybrid option here at our school where you could choose to come in person or stay at home. Most of our kids chose to stay at home just because, of the risk of a close contact. All it takes is for some random kid to have a runny nose and Phil Maffa's math class, and now he's out for 2 weeks from close contact or whatever. So most of our kids stayed at home. So what we did was they stayed in their fourth period weight training class, and we used fourth period as a meeting time. So our guys would get their position meetings for about an hour during fourth period, where they'd watch practice film, they'd watch game film of the next opponent or whatever. And one of the things we have is we have a number of our coaches who are in the health department. So like our offensive coordinator, our wide receivers coach, our ninth grade head coach, our head coach, and a few others are in the PE department, so they can kind of lead those meetings. And then we had a couple other coaches who their fourth period was their planning period, so they were able to come down and help. So during fourth period, our kids got their position meetings. They were able to watch practice film. They were able to watch game film. And then after school this year is when we lifted weights, just because of the way things are. So our kids would get to school probably about 2:30. We get out of school at 2:10. So they'd get to the school probably around 2:30, 3 o'clock. We'd lift, and then we'd go practice.
Yeah, we were talking. That's all we can do is meet on Zoom, but we don't do it as much as we probably should because we had contact days in October. We could go the whole month of October and be with the kids, but we got shut down 2.5 weeks in because the number skyrocketed. So we're kind of meeting with Zoom, kind of not. They're more worried about grades because this remote learning stuff is killing grades.
Yeah.
And like the school I'm at now, there's 1,800 kids, like total. There was 3,000 failing grades, if that tells you anything.
That's
And
tough.
we're not the only one dealing with it. And
Yeah.
so they're more worried about that. But see, now we're about to start football, hopefully in February. So now we're crunch time of like, we've been meeting on Zoom. But I think staff meetings through Zoom might be a new norm. Like, we're not going to
Yeah.
keep the garage anymore. We're going to meet on Zoom.
We met in person every Sunday. So we kept that normal for us. But back in the spring, we would meet on Zoom, both coaches and players. I think we had position meetings with our guys about 2 times a week for about an hour over the course of the spring. And that continued basically like from March when we got shut down all the way up until June when we were able to start working out again.
Yeah, our head coach is his first year. He took the job in January.
That's tough. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I got hired in June, and there was like a day where I couldn't be with the kids. I had to be on the golf cart with him driving around because they wanted to wait for the fingerprint to go through, which we all knew it would. I've been working with kids for 12 years, but like we just had to wait.
Right.
And I keep asking, I'm like, aren't you glad you took the job in January, February? And I can't repeat what he tells me, but he's stressed to the max.
I can imagine. That's what happens to my buddies down at my old school at Northside. They brought in a new head coach, new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. They're changing everything, and they got all this stuff going on. And then boom, the second week of March hits, and they don't get to see their kids anymore. And so that's tough. Like it was hard for us with a bunch of starters coming back and our offensive and defensive systems already being in place. So I can only imagine, what they were having to deal with trying to install a new system on both sides of the ball and, trying to establish a new culture and a new style of leadership and all that stuff. So I can only imagine what that kind of difficulty was like.
Well, he's the D coordinator, so he's trying to install the 4-2-5. So that's been tough.
Yeah.
I'm the run game coordinator. Nice way to say you're the O-line coach, but I'm the whatever. Our OC is the wide receivers quarterback. He worries about the pass. I worry about the run. So we're trying to install just a spread power run game. Like we're tight ends, H backs, but we're spread. Trying to install that has been easy for me as an O-line coach because I'm stupid and I'm simple. So I'm like, hey, I'm going to keep the rules the same.
Yeah.
I'm not doing my job if I don't we don't talk X's and O's, I guess. I guess I'm not doing my job. I just like talking about other things other than X's and O's sometimes.
No, I feel you.
Like I had Coach Mac on, the YouTube Coach Mac.
Yeah.
And before we recorded, he was like, you can ask me X's and O's, but if we talk things other than that, I'm fine because
Yeah.
that's all he does.
Right.
Alaka, we talked about WWE, we talked about he loves golf, and he's like, nobody knows that, but I love golf. And I was like, oh, he goes, I'm just the YouTube Coach Mac guy. And,
Yeah.
So I'll just start with this. So I love Inside Zone, and I didn't really run it till a couple years ago. The school I was at that went 10-1. Their bread and butter was Inside Zone and trap.
Mm-hmm.
But our Inside Zone was not take a step to the right or left and go up the field. It was double teams everywhere. So we were double teaming the front side or whatever. So for people listening, it's like duo. You're just not blocking the end, and that's the way we went about it. So it's gap scheme stuff, but then it's zone stuff once you get to the backer. And at the school I'm at now, they want to run ISO. That's one of the plays they want. So for us, our ISO I got from Illinois College. It's blocked like duo basically. So for ISO right, we don't. My linemen aren't blocking the right backer.
Yeah.
Our inserts the H back or tight end, wing, running back, whatever. And I try, and the school doesn't want to run inside zone because they were so bad at it, I guess, for a couple of years. So the cockiness in me is like, no, I'm here. It's fine. I've been running inside zone for years.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we don't have athletic linemen to take a step to the right or the left and go up the field and be one-on-one with a backer, in space. And I said, I hear you. So here's the thing. You see this ISO play that I'm going to install today? And they said, yeah. I erased blocking the end and made them go get a backer. I said, there's our inside zone. They said, what? And I said, that's my inside zone. I know it's not technically inside zone, but for me, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Do I sound like an idiot to you for doing that? That's just what we do. Because we were like, if we don't have athletic linemen, we want to double team and then get to the backer. We'd rather get 4 yards on this run play and then get sacked or get hit in the backfield because we're not going where we need to go.
Yeah, I mean, I think you gotta be able to adjust and adapt to what your kids do best. I think the mistake a lot of coaches sometimes make is just going in there and say, we're going to do this no matter what. But I think you definitely have to adapt to what your kids are capable of, and try to emphasize the skills that they have, and so they can be successful.
So what do you guys do? That's another thing real quick. Me and Coach Mac said, can you define a spread? He goes, can you define a spread team to me?
Yeah, there's so many different definitions. I mean, I guess, you might consider, I guess, basically any team in shotgun now is a spread team.
Well, don't tell he told me that. We talked about that on the podcast. He was like, because I said something about being spread. And he goes, hold on. He goes, I'm going to ask you a question. He's like, what's spread? And I said, well, I guess when the quarterback lines up in shotgun, he goes, okay. So when they line up in shotgun and run triple option out of shotgun, they're a spread team then, right? If they bring a hand down tight end, are they still spread? And I started laughing. I was like, that's a good point. He goes, we needed to start defining offenses as, hey, I'm a heavy gap scheme with some RPO. I'm a heavy zone team with play action. Instead of like, I'm under center triple option, or I'm a spread power run team. And I still do. We're a power spread. We're a spread power run team. I'm like, Steve, that's not what we are. We are a power run team with gap schemes, but we happen to have our quarterback at 5 yards.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we would mix it up a little bit. I mean, we'd line up in empty. We'd line up in, 2x2 and 3x1, a fair number, but we could also bring a tight end and an H back in the game if we needed to get down and dirty with some stuff. So we were a little bit of a mix of both, I guess you could say. We were able to use our personnel in whatever we felt like would put us in an advantageous situation in that regard.
So like, what would be your bread and butter for since you're the line coach, like for runs, like what was your guys' bread and butter?
So last year, our bread and butter was wide zone.
Okay.
We averaged over 8 yards of carry on it. This year, we were still pretty good at it. We weren't quite as good. But this year, we were definitely more of an inside zone and a counter team.
So if you're inside zone, were you traditional, like we're moving this way up the field?
Yeah. So if we're running inside zone, right, everybody's driving off their left foot. They're starting their initial zone tracks to the right, and then they adjust their technique based on the alignment of the defenders in front of them. That includes defensive linemen as well as linebackers.
And then with your wide zone, you need to educate me. So I'm not a big fan of wide zone, and I'll tell you why. I never really ran it till a couple years ago when the coach wanted it, and we did. But they already had it installed before I got there, and so I just did what they did. And you can tell me if I'm right or wrong. So it's hard to do on camera. So like if we're running wide zone, we're going to the right. We're kind of like opening up our shoulders all the way and moving that way, trying to get to the next guy, and going up. And I didn't like it because I don't like opening up the shoulders towards the sideline. I don't want to give up ground to get ground, if that makes sense. And so I was like, I kind of don't like this. And then like I don't like having the lineman go like this and then turn up. Like I'd rather see what's going on.
Yeah, so we never use the verbiage give up or lose ground to gain ground. I never use that phrase. I don't particularly care for it. But the how we taught our wide zone was that every offensive lineman is trying to get their backside hand down the next defender's sternum, and they're trying to drive their backside knee through the next defender's crotch. And so what I teach our guys is your angle is determined by the alignment of the defender. So if I'm a right tackle and I've got a tight 5 technique on me, I don't have to open up to get my backside hand down his sternum and my backside knee down his crotch. I can be much more square and I can be much more patient with it. Whereas if I'm the right guard and there's nobody in B gap, well, the next down lineman is that 5 technique. Well, if I'm the right guard, I do have to open up. I talk about setting your hips on the angle. You got to get your hips on the angle to get to that next guy. And so if you watch teams that run a lot of wide zone, what you'll notice is if you look at the butt shot and you pause it, a couple of seconds or a couple of steps after the play started, you'll be able to tell who was uncovered and who was covered by the start of the play. And that's the basic thing we start with is teaching covered uncovered rules, because you're not gonna use the same technique if you've got a down lineman on top of you versus if you don't. And so you can watch the play and pause it after a couple of steps and tell who was covered and who was uncovered, because the uncovered guys are going to have their hips on a flatter angle to get to the next defender, whereas the guys who are covered are going to have their hips at a more vertical angle because the guy's already right there. So that's how I teach to our guys. That's a very very basic, very fast crash course right there. But for us, it's all about getting my backside hand down the sternum of the defender. And it's all about getting my backside knee through the crotch of the defender. And once I get there, now I'm pressing vertical. I'm not trying to run around a guy and just swing my butt. I want to press through him. I want to displace him on that angle. And so that's how we teach it. I don't use the phrase bucket step. I don't say lose ground to gain ground. I say drive off your backside foot, get your hips on whatever angle it is you need to get your hips on to get your backside hand down that guy's sternum and to get your knee down his crotch. And so I give them that coaching cue and then they go.
I didn't mean to piss. I don't tell the guys lose ground to get ground. It's just the coaches. I'm like, that's what it looks like. So I didn't mean to piss you off there. I'm like, oh, I just pissed him off.
No. That phrase has never made any sense to me. Like, it's just, that doesn't make any sense. I understand what people want, but that there's better ways to communicate that idea. What people are really wanting when they say lose ground to gain ground is they are wanting the play side foot basically to drop back so that you get a shin angle that you need to basically go and create force and sprint. And that's one of the other things I talk about with our guys is if you're an uncovered guy, we talk about toe strike. And so if you are uncovered, you're driving off that backside foot, that play side foot is going to drop back, I guess, but it's not about the foot. It's about the hips.
Okay.
Your foot is dropping back because your hips are turning, right? So now my hips are turning this way. So yeah, my foot is naturally going to drop back. Now my play side foot is under my hips. I've got a shin angle, right? That's going to allow me to drive just like a sprinter would, right? Mm-hmm. If you pause a good wide zone play, maybe after right as that play side foot's getting in the ground, those shin angles and their lower body should look basically just like a sprinter would coming out the blocks, right? The back leg's going to be mostly straight just because they pressed off of their midfoot. They're driving off their backside foot. And now that play side leg is you're going to have that angle right there where that toe is getting in the ground and they are sprinting over to the next guy.
Okay. See, you described it good enough for me. Like, that's so simple enough for me. I'm like, I get it. Like, now I feel bad saying giving up ground to get ground. I don't tell the kids that, but it's just the way I first looked at it, I'm like, wait a minute. But I'm young and stupid at the time, so I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, I know what coaches want when they say that, but there's better ways to coach it, because it's not about putting your foot somewhere so much as it is about getting your hips on the appropriate angle. And it's kind of funny. Coach Blazer, one of my good buddies on Twitter, he was talking about this earlier today on Twitter about a lot of people see it as a quote unquote false step because the offensive lineman is stepping underneath themselves. Well, yeah, you have to step underneath yourself for that particular technique, because in order to create momentum and create force and acceleration that way, your foot has to be under your hips so you can drive. You cannot push, right? You cannot drive and create force through the ground if your foot is in front of your hips. It's just that doesn't work. It's not how the body works. At that point, you're more pulling than anything, and that does not create optimal force. You've got to get that foot underneath your hips so that now you can create momentum going in the direction you want to go.
What creates momentum, and then I think it stops you from getting a wide, like your feet so far away from your shoulders.
Correct.
I try to teach it. I try to teach certain blocking schemes because I coach basketball. I'm like, when I teach defense in basketball, you don't want your feet so far from your hips because now you don't have that center to push off where you want to go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's another people need to think about that. Like, do you want your feet so wide apart where you don't have power and you can't move? Or to get to where you need to go, you have to take that. That's old school thinking now. Like, you have to take this step and this step. Well, it's like you have to adjust it, take this step so they can get power and go this way.
Yeah, we don't ever do like we do it as kind of part of like a pregame warm up, just again to kind of get the body flowing. But we don't ever like in practice start with, all right, here we're gonna do our 6-inch steps. I'm gonna blow the whistle and you're gonna do your 6-inch step, and then I'm gonna blow 2 whistles and you're gonna do 2 6-inch steps. I don't do that, because it's I don't know, just don't do it. We get on the sled for pre-practice, just again kind of get the muscles firing. I know people like say you got to live and die on the sled. I think it has its purpose or whatever, but we'll get on the sled, we'll hit it for about 10 minutes or so pre-practice, and then that's it. I'm not gonna sit there and drive the sled 100 yards for 45 minutes of practice for an hour, because the sled doesn't move. Mm-hmm. Right? The sled's not going to move. When I say hit, right, the sled doesn't move. And so for us, there's certain use you can get out of it. Like I said, the main thing is for us getting our butt muscles firing, getting our legs going and stuff or whatever. And we'll do some 6-point explosion on it. We'll do some stuff just to kind of get us going, right, to get us going, get some contact or going, whatever. And but I don't use a lot of, I guess you would say, the traditional coaching cues or coaching things or whatever. Not saying that they're necessarily wrong, but I think there are more efficient ways to get things done.
Yeah, it's not back in the day where it was, we're going to hit the sled and you're going to go for 25 minutes. And we're so tired that when we get to team time, we're like, we can't move anymore.
Yeah. If our guys drive the sled, they're going to make contact with the sled and drive it for 3 to 4 seconds max. Because, that's about how long the football play lasts. Maybe 5-6 seconds at most. So that's just kind of my philosophy behind things.
It just works on spacing. It works on hand placement. It works on being quick. And it should, like you said, it's meant to wake you up. It's meant to like work on hand placement, wake you up, move the feet, and we're done.
Right.
Then we're going to work on what's important. We're going to work on inside zone. We're going to work on power. Like the stuff that means something, not just hitting the sled. And like what my school was, we had a sand pit. So we bear crawl in the sand pit too. Like that's the old school.
Because that's totally relevant to O-line play.
No offense to my head coach, because like that was back in the day. We had 2-a-days and stuff. So it's like, we're going to go in the sand pit and bear crawl, and you're going to learn how to stay low because of the bear crawl. You're going to get quicker feet because you're in the sand. And I'm like, okay, I understand the feet part. That's why people run in the sand. But doing it for 15 minutes because practice is 2.5 hours, 3 hours.
Yeah, that sounds tough.
Well, and we all had that mindset. Like, these kids aren't tough anymore because they don't have two-a-days. But then a part of me is like, are they smarter? Because how many concussions did we all probably have and just brushed it off?
Yeah, well, every generation likes to say that the generation that comes after them is soft. It's been going on for hundreds of years. So that some of that stuff frustrates the crap out of me when I hear people saying that. Kids aren't soft. It's just different. It's been that way for hundreds of years.
Yeah, they're not soft. And we can, like you said, you don't have to actually coach toughness, but it's just putting them in tough situations. You don't have to say, hey, we're going to go hit each other for a half hour, do Oklahoma drill for a half hour. It's, why don't we put you in a realistic situation? And you can translate that realistic situation to life. Because, like, right now, life is very tough.
Oh yeah.
So if you learn in football, like at a drop of a dime, you're going to be put in this tough situation. Well, this COVID thing, drop of a dime, we are all in a tough situation.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like, what did that Oklahoma drill do for you for a half hour?
Gave
And
you a concussion or
gave
two.
you, or like, you guys didn't earn, this was the best. You don't earn a 5-minute water break. You have to be back in 30 seconds. It's like, what?
Oh yeah, that's my was it my freshman or sophomore? My freshman year. Our coach got mad one day at practice and told us we were because we used to have the water girls or whatever at practice, and they would carry around the little six bottle carton of water, and we could get a shot in between drills or whatever it was. And he got pissed off one day and he banned the water on the practice field. So there was no more water allowed on the practice field because we were using water as a crutch, was his exact words.
Yeah. We never got water taken away, but it might be like, hey, instead of taking a water break now, we're going to do this drill first and then you'll get it. So now it's extended another 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Or it was, you were over there for only like 30 seconds. Because back in the day, we had the water jugs. We call it the Pride Land. That's where offensive line went. And we had this huge tree because we're country folks. So right next to the practice field is a corn or a cow farm. So that's where we're dealing with. So you have this big tree in the shade, the water jugs, the cups. In 30 seconds, you are not getting the water and stuff. So it turned into, we got the water put on our heads and then went.
Yeah.
I'm drinking. It was like, you lost your 2-minute water break. It's like 30 seconds. If you do that now, you're fired. Like,
Yeah.
that's not happening. And
Yeah, you gotta. I'm not sure how hot it gets up there in Illinois at the hottest parts of the year, but down here in Georgia, it gets pretty darn hot. And so there's for us, there's regulations that says for us, if it's breaches a certain temperature, you have to have this many water breaks and stuff like that, and like it's got to be on your practice schedule and stuff. People can see that. So, which obviously is smart. Obviously, the last thing anybody wants is to have kid pass out and die, due to heat exhaustion or something like that. So people can say what they want. I don't think kids today are soft. Come work with our kids. They're extremely tough. They're extremely resilient. They are mentally and physically as tough as you could ask for. So I don't just don't buy into that whole idea that kids are soft.
they might be soft if they're undisciplined. So if you have a team that's undisciplined, that looks soft because they're doing stuff they shouldn't do. If you structure things right and you're there for them and they know that you care about them, they're not soft. They're not going to do stupid things. So I think maybe that's where soft comes into play.
Well, and again, I haven't been doing this as long as some other people, but from what I've observed, 90% of kids will rise to the expectations and the standards that you set for them.
Mm-hmm.
If you set a clear standard and you hold them to that standard and you don't fluctuate, most of the time the kids will rise to that standard as long as it's reasonable. And I think the biggest problem that people have with kids today is that they're not able to explain why they ask kids to do things. Mm-hmm. I think that's the biggest thing, maybe the biggest difference between kids now and kids 30, 40, 50 years ago is they want to know why. And that's good. I think that's a good thing. And as long as you can explain why, and as long as it's logical, then most of the time the kids will respond just in a positive way, and they'll rise to the expectation. But you can't get away with saying, well, because I said so anymore. And I think that's a good thing, because I think it forces coaches to reevaluate their coaching cues, and it causes them to reevaluate why exactly they do certain things, other than, well, we did it at my high school, so we're going to do it here. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on the issue.
we've always done it this way. So this is what
Yes.
we're going to do.
Most dangerous words in football.
I've been around that school I told you where we couldn't film practice. That's what I heard. Well, let's put it to you this way. I was the only coach on staff not born and raised in that town.
Yeah.
So all I heard was, well, this is how so-and-so, and no offense, this is another good story. So Coach Monken at Army, his family is all from Illinois. His uncle is a legendary coach in that town, Coach Bill Monken. Now, they kept telling me, go back and look what he does. Go look at this Monken. Go look at this Monken. Go look at this Monken. This is the way we've always. And I heard that. Now I talked to Bill. He goes, do your own thing. Don't do what we're doing. So then the argument became, well, then this other coach is how we've always done it. Why don't you do this? And that's all I heard.
Yeah.
And guess what? I said, this is probably why I left. I was like, oh, where's it gotten you? That's kind of what I said. They haven't won state titles. They haven't made the playoffs since 2012.
Yeah.
Not trying to be mean. There's great people there. But after about 4 years of taking it, you kind of have to say something. I'm like, where's it gotten you? And I'm an asshole, but I'm like, that's kind of what it was. But yeah, it's the most dangerous words. And that's how I could respond to it. I was like, well, you have to adapt. I'm not saying get rid of your core values. If you're a gap scheme team, don't just abandon and go to something else. Keep your core values, but there's ways to tweak things and adjust. Like,
yep. In the words of Dub Maddox, adapt or die.
Right. And I tell people this all the time. We're not Alabama. Look at Nick Saban from the time he got to Alabama and look at Nick Saban now, how they've adapted.
Yep.
This sprint-based run stuff he wouldn't have done in 2011 or whatever. He's doing it now.
Yep.
Because he's adapted. That's the spread offense you're seeing. I guess, well, I don't know if it's spread, but some line up in shotgun every play. They didn't do that. Read his books. He wants to be an under center, I formation, fullback, tailback run.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's adapted to it and said, well, this is what it's gone to. Like, we can move the ball better.
Yeah.
Nothing against wing T and triple option, but for him, he's like, this is what we do. And I'm keeping a long time. I should do my job. So you guys are inside zone, outside zone, counter. You guys get into the RPO stuff, air raid passing, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we don't necessarily. I mean, we run some, I guess, what you might consider air raid concepts. We kind of have a mix of some of the West Coast stuff and the air raid stuff, but we do a lot of RPO stuff off our stuff. We were big this year in running the kind of that, I guess you could say that 5-step slant or glance post or whatever you want to call it, from the single to the boundary, kind of reading that weak safety. That was a particularly good one for us this year.
Yeah, and then we talked about taking the quick game air raid stuff, and that's also our RPO. We'll just tag the inside zone, or they don't have inside zone right now, ISO or power. Like, hey, stick or inside zone stick.
Yeah.
So the wide receivers to them is you're running stick.
Yeah.
Nothing changes. The only thing that changes is linemen are going to run block, and all that. And so that way you're not adding a play, because we want to be simple.
Right.
Especially with our first practice is February 15th, first game is 5th. So we literally have no time. Trying to install on Zoom, trying to do that. So for you guys, do you guys do similar things, or do you have your own RPO plays, or is it like you marry it off of quick game?
Yeah, we usually will just tag something with our run concept. We'll tag maybe a bubble screen or a little hitch route or a slant or something like that. We just tag whatever it is we need.
I think coaches need to hear that, because they want to do quick game, and then they want to go look at, no offense to Brent Dearman, he has some RPO plays. They want to go look at that and say, well, this is our RPO plays. And I'm like, well, now you're adding something. The linemen are fine because it's the same, but it's overall more confusing, I think, or you're just adding more.
Yeah, I mean, I think the simplest way to do your RPOs is just make sure you're protected C gap to C gap, and then tag whatever it is that you want to throw, and give your quarterback a way to teach him, let him know. And you also got to kind of decide, do you want to be a pre-snap RPO team? Do you want to be a post-snap RPO team? Do you want to have a little bit of both? And so just kind of go through teaching your quarterback how to understand which side is this pre-snap read, which side is this post-snap read. And again, the biggest thing is to keep it simple for the OL. And so just tagging stuff with your base runs is probably the simplest way to do it. You just got to make sure you're protected C gap to C gap. If you're going to throw something maybe down the field, like I don't like running inside zone with a stick and leave the defensive end unblocked and try to throw a stick route. Because some of the defensive linemen that we see here in 7A ball in Georgia, if you leave them unblocked, they're going to hit your quarterback. And he might get the ball off, but he's going to get hit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if we were going to do something like that, we'd run like divide zone, where what some people may call split zone. So that way I've got C gap to C gap is block. Quarterback is responsible for the D gap run fitter. And that way, if that guy blitzes, unless he just lines up on the line of scrimmage, in which case you just, take it now. But if he blitzes from space, he's not going to get to the quarterback before the ball's thrown. He's not going to really be able to get a hit on the quarterback.
You're seeing a huge split zone thing going on right now. Everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
And they do that split zone. I call it split zone release for that guy just to go. That is all the rage now. And that's all you're seeing people research. Like, I want to research split zone. I'm like, people have been doing it for years.
Yeah.
Auburn has done it for years. Well, maybe not now because Gus is gone, but he's got to get a job, right? See, I'm jumping around. He's got to go. He might take the year off.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe get one of those well-paid analyst jobs. Who knows?
I say Nick Saban should hire him.
Yeah, I mean, Nick's done that before. He hired what was the guy? Butch Jones. He had him on staff, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's precedent for that.
People are saying no, he won't because Auburn versus Alabama thing, and I'm like, I don't think Nick would care too much because he's going to come in and call a good offense. I don't think he'd care about the Auburn thing.
Yeah, money usually talks.
Money talks, and getting baptized to the Lord at Alabama to get your career back on track.
Yeah, absolutely. Seems to have a good track record for that stuff.
Except for Sarkisian's taking a lot of that staff with him.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does at Texas for sure.
And then I saw today Urban Meyer's probably going to be Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, I think that'll be interesting to see if they take Fields over Lawrence with him going there.
That's the question. I don't know who he would. Because if he doesn't take Fields, is he going to get a lot of heat from Ohio State?
Yeah, who knows? It will be interesting to see, that's for sure. Gotta love that coaching carousel.
But he might bring the whole Ohio State staff with him.
Yeah, I've heard he's kind of already got most of his guys assembled that he wants if he gets the job.
Because yesterday they're talking, and then today I saw he's assembling a staff.
Mm-hmm.
So if he gets the whole staff, then I think he'll say yes. And they're going to pay him a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of wanted him to go to Notre Dame because that's where he wants to go.
Oh, really?
Because he coached there as a wide receivers coach, and then that's one of the places on his list.
That'd be interesting for sure.
Now, I'm an asshole. He's almost had heart attacks at Florida and Ohio State. What's going to happen in the NFL?
I don't know. Maybe it's that time to recover, I guess. That money makes those problems go away.
Yeah, I don't know. I told somebody that I was on a podcast the other day. I was like, he'll die on the sideline at NFL. He can't handle the Florida and Ohio State. What's going to happen? And I'm an asshole, though. So I'm like, oh, but you're right. If he's getting $12 million or more or whatever it is, like he's fine.
Yeah. And you don't have to necessarily deal with some of the same issues you deal with in college at the NFL level.
Right. He's going to have people do it for him.
Yeah.
And he just has to be the face, really. Like, hey, run this offense. You guys can do this defense. I'm just going to be the face and manage.
Absolutely.
That's all I have to do. All right, Coach. Well, I've taken a lot of your time, so I appreciate it. We didn't do a lot of X's and O's, but I like conversation more than.
Oh yeah, I mean, like you said, you can get X's and O's from almost anywhere. So it's good to talk about some other things and kind of how people do things in different places outside of the X's and O's.
And I know you have a voice already on social media, but like I've had coaches on here that don't, and they thank me. They're like, I never thought I would do a podcast. I'm like, I'll talk to anybody. I don't care.
Yeah, I love talking ball now.
Yeah, and that's why my podcast was originally called the Sideline Podcast with Coach Steve, because I was like, it has to be football, right? So what's the name? The Sidelines. And then I found myself, I pigeonholed myself to just be football, which is nothing wrong with that. But like I coach basketball. I love Marvel movies. I love this. And so I changed it to the Coach Steve show. So like I have a podcast episode on here. Me and my friend from high school, we talked about Marvel. He loves movies. He loves the
Yeah.
movie theater. And that's where I think that was the turning point for me was coaches are more than just coaches. They're more than just X's and O's. There's
Yeah, for sure.
philosophy, there's culture, there's this. Coach Mack loves WWE for people that didn't know. He loves Metallica. I had to open up his show when I recorded it afterwards. He goes, put a Metallica song when it first comes on. So it is. I was like, I have to find one.
Yeah.
And I can't post it on YouTube because of copyright things, but on my podcast I can.
Yeah.
I guess the last question is who's going to win with Bama and Ohio State?
No, Alabama. It's Ohio State's good, but I mean, it's at the end of the day, the game comes down to Jimmys and Joes. And Alabama just had 7 of their Jimmys win the 15 of the best Jimmy awards. So like like I said, Ohio State's a good team, but right now this may be the best offensively. This is probably the best Alabama team they've ever had.
Who knew when we said Alabama, we'd think offense before defense?
Right. That's just nature of the game now.
And I hate Ohio State. I said they shouldn't have been in the playoff. I said that from the get-go. And if you remember a couple years ago, which maybe it hurts you guys because you're in Georgia, but that year, Alabama played Clemson the first round as like the revenge game from the championship from before. Alabama spent all their energy on that game.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to play Georgia, and Georgia should have won that game, actually, I think.
Yeah, those are tough memories. Definitely should have won that game.
But see, I'm a Nick Saban fan, so I guess I'm an Alabama. I have an Alabama hoodies and stuff, but I'm a Nick Saban fan. But I do like Georgia. I root for Georgia until the Alabama game. But watching that game, I still remember to this day, I was like, Georgia's not tired. They did not spend all their energy like Alabama just did.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's happening now. Ohio State played all their energy into that Clemson game.
Yeah, that was a heck of a game.
Justin Fields had to play his best game of his life with 5 broken ribs.
Yeah.
And now you're about to play Alabama. And you gave Nick Saban 11 days to look at this. And they didn't spend all that energy to beat Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So I have Bama by 10.
Yeah, I'll be surprised if it's that close.
Well, I took Clemson. I said from the get-go, I talk so much shit. I was like, Clemson's going to win it was going to be a 45-17 or 38-17. I was wrong.
Yeah.
But having a play caller, people don't realize that play caller being gone changed a lot.
Yeah, and it's hard to gauge Ohio State with them only playing 6 games too. So.
Well, yeah, I told people he was right though. Like that's actually an advantage for Ohio State. You only have 6 games to watch on us, and we have 11 on you.
Right.
So Bama will win. I just say 10 because I don't know what Ohio State. It depends on which Ohio State team shows up. But Justin Fields being hurt, there's no way he's going to come back and run all over the field being with that shot.
Yeah, a lot depends on his health for sure.
And I don't think he still knows what's wrong. I don't think they've told him. They're probably like, you have to play.
Yeah, I don't know. It's did they say if like he has broken ribs or not, or are they kind of keeping that on the hush hush?
I haven't seen anything. I figured that'd be like headline news.
Yeah, they probably kind of keep that on the low.
But he said at halftime when he went in, he's like, we didn't do any X-rays. They didn't tell me nothing. They gave me a shot of something, and I went. And Ryan Day said the same thing. He laughed. He goes, they took care of him. He's back on the field. So like he doesn't want to know. He's like, I don't want to know.
Understandable.
And then you got Bama that can score 50 points.
Mm-hmm.
And Mac Jones is the best check down quarterback I've ever seen. Now look who he's throwing to, but like he goes through his progression. Mike Leach would love him. You know, progression running back.
Yeah. They're rolling right now, that's for sure.
Well, all right. So you have Bama, I've got Bama. You got Bama by more than 10. I'm saying 10 just because I don't want to look like an idiot again. Because I even said Bama by 40 at Notre Dame.
Yeah. They probably could have gotten there if they wanted to.
Yeah, Nick Saban owes me money. I said plus 19 or whatever, or minus 19. I'm like, he owes me like $10.
Yeah.
I think he can afford it, right? He can
probably so. I think you can spare a few bucks.
All right, Coach. Well, I appreciate you coming on here. Thank you so much. Everybody out there, stay safe, wear a mask so no one can play football and basketball. And I'll see you guys next time.